slot. So with only an hour slot available, it's good to keep to time. In case you saw something flash up on the screen, I believe they're going to record today's session so that they can put it on the platform and you can look at it at a later date. Or for those people who haven't come along today, they'll be able to catch up with it at a later date. If you've got any questions or anything like that, if you could perhaps either put up your hand and I'll answer them if there's a convenient time to do so. If not, we'll perhaps just go through them at the end. I'm going to hand over to Nikki Fawcett now, who's going to give us a brief introduction and try and set the scene before we start. Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks, Jackie. So I think a lot of you have spoken to me throughout the duration of applying for your grants for Happy, but I'm Nikki, I'm the grants manager for the programme. We've invited Jackie to deliver this session for us today because we just really wanted to stress the importance of monitoring and evaluation and how that helps us tell the story of Happy and how we've used those funds. And we really need your help and support to do that. And I guess kind of the bigger picture is ultimately HSP, Herts Community Foundation, where I'm based, and Herts County Council are responsible for and they need to be accountable for the monies that we receive from government to deliver the Happy programme. So we need to report back on how that money's been spent, and obviously part of that is looking at the figures, the number of bookings, the number of attendances, but in some ways that's the easy part of evaluation. We have those figures available through your registers and through the information that you've shared, you've recorded in Playways, but the difficult part is kind of understanding the story behind that. So this is an opportunity for us to help you, to help us to champion the programme, the hard work and expertise that your team have delivered in making sure that all of the attendees have the very best experience. Now, we do understand that obviously some of you are only going to be dealing with people who might attend your session for once. So we also have to be realistic about kind of the information, the information data that you can really generate from that. But we're hoping that our new monitoring form, we've added a bit of information to it, will help us in our first step to improving the quality of data and information that we can then use to improve our programs, how we support you, how we help you to develop your teams, your workforce, but also obviously the experience of the individuals who are attending or not attending. What are those barriers? What's the feedback that you're getting? That kind of sets, I think, a little bit of the tone. Our bigger kind of objective is over the summer period, we're going to be launching an evaluation framework, but we were very aware that we didn't want to miss the opportunity for Easter to kind of kickstart that. So we kind of have a two-stepped approach. So for Easter, we have made a couple of changes to our monitoring form. We had a little bit more information there, and we've kindly had Jackie agree to deliver these monitoring sessions for us to give a little bit more information as to why we're asking certain things and some tips and hints that you can use hopefully to pull that out from your delivery. And then moving forward, we're working behind the scenes with somebody we've brought on board as a consultant to help us to develop our monitoring in more detail. And there'll be a new evaluation framework that's going to be launched for the summer programme, summer delivery, hopefully. So I hope that gives you a little bit of context as to where we are. And then I'm going to hand back to Jackie unless anyone has any questions at this point.
Thank you, Nikki. If you've got any more technical questions about the booking system or anything like that, you're best to direct those questions to the grants team themselves, because I have no knowledge. Is it called PlaySkill, Nikki? The booking system?
It's Playways.
Playways. I have no experience of Playways, what it might look like either from their perspective or from your perspective either. So if you have any of those questions, please direct them towards Nikki and the team at HSP, and they'll be in the best place to answer them. I'm here as one of Herts Community Foundation's trainers, just to give you a broad overview about monitoring and evaluation in general, and then specifically about the evaluation form that you're being asked to complete. So thank you very much, Nikki.
Jackie, I'm really sorry. Can I butt back in again? Because there's one thing I've kind of forgotten to say, which I think is really important. So obviously we are using that information to understand about your programs, but I do also want to be really clear, there's no right or wrong. We know with every project things go right, things go wrong, and it's about that learning. So whilst yes, it gives us a sense of how your club's performed, there will be obviously the visits and things that happen and go out and kind of our general conversations with you. So it's more about helping us to understand the impacts on the beneficiaries. So if you're having a conversation with one of your, somebody who's attending, it's about, how has things changed as a result of that? What did you do? They may have come attended feeling shy, not really engaging, but your team helped them to, build friendships, build confidence. And as a result of that, actually they've signed up for another activity. It might not be with your organisation, but there's another activity. So I know in our criteria, in our guidance notes, we've said that monitoring will be taken into account with regards to future delivery and future applications. But I don't want that to be a deterrent. We really need to capture accurate, honest, open feedback as part of the process. And I think it's really important that we stress that, we're happy to have a chat about anything that comes up along the way. And I'm sorry that I didn't say that at the start, because I think that's really key. Thanks, Jackie.
That's a pleasure. And we will go through some of those, how are you going to explain the challenges and things like that. And I would always say that honesty and transparency and good communication is the bedrock of anything. So that if you've got a query, when you're writing those grant applications, you can't know, especially if you're a relatively new provider or this is a sort of slightly different, you never know how things are going to work out. So actually at the end of the day, it's better to make those changes which improve things for the people who are participating, and that you let the Community Foundation know as you go along. Right, I'm going to launch the Death by PowerPoint now. So hopefully we'll be able to see this. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to find this. Right, okay. Can you all see the screen? Yeah, okay, I can see somebody nodding. So from that point of view, as I said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jackie Heim. I'm one of the trainers from HCF. Oh, let me just let somebody else in. Oh, I'm also good at juggling balls and things like that. And please do forgive me if the slides jump around. I did notice last night, and I can't understand why they keep moving around, but for some unfathomable reason they do. Nikki's explained a little bit about the reasoning behind the session, but it's to make sure that that monitoring form, oh, you see, I said they jump, to make sure that that monitoring form, when you complete it, you complete it with with as much information as you possibly can, whether that's positive or negative. And this session hopefully will help you if you're not used to monitoring and evaluating in the particular way that the Community Foundation are asking you. But I think it's really simple. Let's just move on. And in order to, so that we can all start from the same point, I wanted to provide you with an explanation about what both words mean, so that we're all starting from the same point. I think most people who are involved in running an activity or a project, and certainly all of you who applied for a grant from the Community Foundation in the past, will have heard of the phrase of monitoring and evaluation. First of all, monitoring is quite clear up there on the slide. It's the collecting and recording of information, what your group's doing, and that would normally be whilst that activity is taking, you see, it does jump, whilst that activity is taking place. Evaluating is something that you would do after the activity has taken place, using that information that you've gathered whilst that activity was ongoing. And for whether you're a voluntary sector group, a CIC or a business, monitoring and evaluation really does help provide you with the information to make sure that you're achieving what you want to achieve, and enabling you to demonstrate really to the outside world what you're doing is useful and has an impact. So let's just move on to the next slide. If you look at monitoring and evaluation in that way, every group does monitoring and evaluation to a certain level. It could be that you're just counting how many people turn up. That's monitoring. It could be that you're just chatting to people at the end of the activity, at the end of the day. That's evaluation. You're checking whether that child, that participant enjoyed that activity. When you signed your grant offer letter, you agreed to provide monitoring information, and therefore it should be treated as a key part of the process. It's not something you should be thinking of afterwards. You know, we are still jumping. You should be setting in place what you're hoping to monitor before and at the same time as you plan your activities. You need to make sure that you've got sufficient capacity throughout that activity to do that monitoring, so that you have that data that you need to complete your form. And to give you that clear picture you need at the end, it has to be, it's something that has to be done, but it doesn't have to be onerous, and it doesn't have to be a huge struggle to do. It has to be proportionate. Like Nikki was saying, if you've got you're just running a day's activity, you need to make sure that your monitoring is proportionate to the activity that you're delivering. Later on the slide with impact and outcomes, there's some ideas about what the Community Foundation is looking for you to include in your report. So if you try and answer some of those questions, it does give you the sorts of level of information that you're looking for and make your evaluation report more successful. Think about the things that you want to monitor. Think about the time it will take you. Think about how simple you can make things. It could be just a reflection during lunchtime or at the end of the day. And focus on quality rather than quantity. Don't try and get feedback from, if you've got 50 people at your holiday club, don't try and get feedback from all 50. Try and think about how you can get some really good quality information from a small cohort, and try and make your life that little bit easier, as well as provide the sort of quality information that the Community Foundation are looking for. There's two kinds of information to collect. So what funders would call outputs, so their numbers could be from a register, tick boxes, different things like that, that just register the number of sessions or the types of activity you've offered. But then the other information that I think Nikki mentioned earlier on is what funders call outcomes. Did that child not only enjoy that session, became less isolated, but did they think about possibly joining another club or doing another activity somewhere else? So try and think of it in those two ways, and you might measure those things differently. Don't try and use one tool to measure all. You're counting outputs, the number of sessions. It won't be possible for you to be able to measure the outcomes of, did they go to another activity? Would they take up that activity at a later date? So anyhow, thinking about ways to collect feedback. There are ways that you can make this easy for yourselves. I would perhaps, when you're discussing with staff before you start the activity, give them a couple of questions to use as part of their questioning and talking with the children, and asking them to write down the answers. Any attendance sheets or any evaluation sheets from the activity that you would do. I think people call them happy sheets that some of the kids are asked to complete. I really like if you're delivering to the older age group graffiti boards, that you're asking them to write up things that they've enjoyed, they might want to do again, and it doesn't have to be expensive in terms of resourcing that. It could be a flip chart with just some post-it notes. All kids love sticking post-it notes on things. If you're artistic, you can make that board a tree, and you can get them to put their thoughts in the tree. Doesn't even need to be sort of talking to the young people themselves. It could be that you're questioning the staff. Did this activity work? How many children participated? Would would they choose to do that activity again? Would we deliver that in a different way? So use your staff as a way of monitoring your activities. They don't have to be filling in things after work or after you've delivered your activity, but let them know that there's an expectation that you will be wanting feedback from them and the types of information that you want. All your staff are going to be discussing at lunchtime, perhaps with the young people as they're sitting down. Give them a couple of questions to ask and get them to write that down. Do you like the food? Do you like vegetarian food? Do you prefer hot, cold food? There are lots of things that you can ask them that then allow you to adjust your program so that it's more successful, as well as give that monitoring information to the Community Foundation. So try and think of it that way. At the end of the day, can you build in a reflection time with the young people? It's a really good way of gathering that information, but also preparing them to go home and collecting their things so that they're ready to leave the activity or the building at the end of the day. Obviously, surveys and questionnaires are an easy, cheap way of gathering information. The people I was talking to yesterday on the training, they were, we're still jumping around. They were saying they use SurveyMonkey. Some of you are familiar with SurveyMonkey. They send it out to parents. And I think, as I mentioned, somebody was concerned that they wouldn't be able to get a response from all the parents. But actually, we're looking for some good feedback, and those parents complete those easy questions, but are able to give you more than "we enjoyed that a lot." It's, why did they enjoy that particular activity? I think somebody yesterday was fencing. Had you ever done fencing before? Did you enjoy the fencing? Would you do fencing, or would you be interested in joining a club afterwards? And there's simple ways that you can phrase those questions in your SurveyMonkey surveys that help. Ask for informal feedback. Ask the parents to sort of text in or message. That all gives you, you're beginning to then build up a body of evidence that you can use to fill out your form. There's two reasons why you would do evaluation. The funder needs it in order to identify quotes and feedbacks to use to champion their program, both generally with the funders, but also when they're filling in their own evaluation form and sending that back to the government that released the funding. They have to do that 3 times a year. So the information, they need a reasonable amount of information to be able to do that to a sufficient standard. And like I said, try and give specific examples that they can use in their report. Any case studies, any marketing you've produced, share with the Community Foundation so that they can include that as part of their marketing and promotion to attract more people onto the program. If you've got some really great publicity or great social media, tag them in, and then we can spread the word. And the more successful the program looks, the more likelihood is that it will continue to be funded as the years go by. So that's really important. HCF know that the program's successful. They know that you're delivering some really fantastic activities, but they need the evidence from you to prove that that's happening. So make sure that you give them the types of information. And if you're not sure what you should include and what you shouldn't, give them a call, ask for help. Clearly, if you're sharing photographs or anything like that, make sure that you've got permission to share those, and anything else, that any GDPR, that you're compliant, to make sure that they're able to use that information. But not only, we're still jumping around, not only is this useful for the funder, you also should be looking at this evidence to give you the information you need to make sure that your delivery is right, that you might need to make some changes for next time. You know, what were the benefits to the people who came along to your activity? What were the best bits? You know, you need to know that so you can duplicate that for the future yourselves. You know, what were the problems in terms of, did the parents find it difficult to turn up and park at that time? Did, you know, clearly, you know, were they able to book on? Did they get the activities they wanted? Were there enough places on the activities that you were offering? Any feedback like that from the parents is really useful and allows you as a business or a project or as a group to adapt your program to make sure that you're getting and offering what people want. Let's go on to, I feel like these slides are really running away with me and I'm talking faster and faster to keep up with the slides. When you're writing your evaluation report, the first thing I would suggest to you is read your original application. Make sure that you're responding with the right facts and figures to the correct funder. Some of you might have a number of funding streams in place and you're filling in one monitoring report and you haven't answered the questions in the right way. So make sure that you're responding to the right application, because I've seen that before. And when you're doing that, include a brief description of the activities you ran and include some figures of how many people took part. We organised 12 basketball sessions for young people, say, for example, aged 11 to 15. Refer back to your original application and then say a total of 14 children attended these sessions. So try and include that sort of detail. They want to know the number of unique users as well as the total number of attendees. If your funding application is focused on running activities for a particular group of people, such as disabled young people, you need to include the information of how many of that particular group took part. Try and explain how you gathered the information to evidence your success. This might include, like I said, counting the number of people that took part. Keep a record perhaps of boys and girls and which sessions that they intend to have attended. In your monitoring report, say we carried out a survey at the beginning and at the end of the project so we can measure how the young people felt about their health and fitness after they had attended the swimming sessions or the boxing sessions. So try and set the scene about how the young people felt at the beginning, what activity they did during your delivery, and how they felt at the end. You know, you would hope that they felt healthier and fitter. They perhaps had an interest in food and nutrition after they'd done the activity. And that's really important to be able to measure that. And that can all be done by questioning, really. It doesn't need to be a complicated or disproportionate large form, I think, really. Quotes, as I said, are a really good way of showing that your program's been successful, and try and keep the questioning simple so that you're able to gather that evidence. Right, we're going to move on and hope not jump around. The new form will have a section about impact and outcomes. Like I said, go back to your original plan. And if you're, say, in your original application, you said something like you had 2 aims. One was to reduce isolation, perhaps by giving young people an opportunity to spend time together. The other one could be about increasing young people's participation in physical exercise. So gather your evidence so that you can show that you've achieved those aims. So it could be that you conduct a survey of everybody who took part, and 64%, and I am just plucking that figure out the air, but 64% said that they had made friends by coming to the activities. It could be that they're from different schools and therefore don't have a chance to mix. You know, they made friends and they potentially would like to try and see those friends again after they've been to your project or activity. It could be, I was talking about participation in physical exercise. So, you know, if you ask everybody who attended the swimming sessions or the boxing sessions, did they feel that they got more physical exercises because they participated in the project? Would they continue to do that again? Was that their only physical exercise? And therefore that's really quite interesting, because if they've not really participated in exercise before, will they continue to do that swimming? Will they join that boxing club afterwards? So I think that's really, really interesting. This comes from the Community Foundation and the sorts of things that they're looking for you to feed back on. Are you able to show that the young people ate healthily during the school holidays, or during, you know, were they active during the school holidays? Did they enjoy and take part in those enriching activities? Did it support their mental health and well-being? So try and go through these things that they're looking for and answer them as part of your monitoring. I think that would be a really useful framework for your responses, because these are the sorts of things that they're looking for. Something else they're looking for is signposting towards other information and support. For example, one of the projects yesterday had managed to get some leaflets, government leaflets about health and nutrition, and they handed those out to the parents of the children who attended the activities. That's very easily achievable. You've got leaflets, you've got publicity, and you've achieved that by signposting them, by handing out that leaflet. You could be giving recipes. If somebody's particularly enjoyed the vegetarian food at lunchtime, you can hand out those recipes. That is sharing that information about nutrition and food, and potentially budgeting if you put some costs on there. So these are easy ways that you can provide that evidence without you changing any delivery or involving any sort of additional resource in terms of staff. So try and think of the quick and easy wins that you can do by doing that. Has your organisation benefited? I think I was speaking to somebody from a boxing club who said that following delivery of last summer's activities, they attracted 5 new members to their boxing club. That's a huge benefit to their organisation, makes them more sustainable going forward. Have you developed new or strengthened relationships? if you've never worked with a community foundation or Heart Sports Partnership before, you can even mention that. It doesn't have to be somebody outside of that, but they are new relationships that you've developed. Have any of your workforce attended any of the training that's been put on offer, whether it's food hygiene, health and safety, even today's training? That's upskilling your organisation and makes you stronger and more sustainable going forward. And they're easy things for you to be able to evidence. It could be that the staff feel more confident because they've been able to access the health and safety training, or they feel safer because they've undertaken some new safeguarding training that they've been able to access through the Happy programme. So think slightly more widely, but that's easy to get down on the form. As we said, it is difficult to know in advance exactly how things are going to work. You could have been planning for torrential rain and you've got everybody inside, and then all of a sudden, a bit like the weather in the, at the moment, it's so hot you don't want to be inside, or everybody wants to be outside. So how have you had to adapt your programme? It could have benefited your organisation, the fact that you've done things slightly differently or different to how you'd actually planned. It could be perhaps, for example, that you'd put on table tennis and badminton sessions, and the table tennis sessions are not very popular, and you decide to offer more badminton sessions to make sure that everybody's catered for. It's not a problem. The funders do understand that there might be slight changes to a plan. It's important to be open about them, but at the end of the day, they want those young people that are attending these sessions to have the best possible time. And so therefore, if you have to adapt your programme to meet their needs, they'll be understanding about that. It could be that you found a better way of delivering an activity. You need more staff. You've had to spend more on your budget to contribute towards a particular activity. Make sure you record that and put that down. It's not a problem. They want to hear about how you've faced those challenges and how you've overcome those challenges, because you definitely will. It could be that you're not sure how your booking system will work coming into your sessions. You might need to change that. You might need, because of COVID or something like that, you might need to stagger start times. Make sure you share that, because that's all really valuable for them to take forward. It could be that you've planned to take the young people to London, for example, and you decide, because of the weather, that you're going to do something local instead. Think about that. That's not necessarily a problem. Those young people might really be enjoying accessing local attractions in Hertfordshire that they can go home and share with their family, who then decide to perhaps go, I live in Hitchin. It could be that you take them to Hitchin Lavender that they didn't know existed, and actually they go home, share it with the family, and then the whole family go to the Hitchin Lavender fields. So it doesn't have to be a problem. It's about identifying where the successes come from those changes and make sure that you get them down. Everybody seems to struggle with case studies, but if you can provide a case study of somebody who came along to the programme, made friends, it could be a refugee family, say, for example, who came along and hadn't started school yet and made friends, that they were then going to go to that particular school, and that helps them settle much better. So try and think of whether you can target one of your members of staff to produce a case study for you. It doesn't always have to be the programme leader that does these things. If you're thinking and planning in advance, this is a good thing for one of your team to do. You can use some of these headings I've listed here and try and produce a case study to share, because they're really valuable for the Community Foundation, as I said. So see if you can come up with some information that can produce. And some of you have probably can write case studies in your sleep. Have always done it for funders and things like that, and they know what they're doing. But if not, take a moment to think about what you're trying to achieve from your case study, jot down some questions, and then see if you can pull together a case study, because that would be really valuable. And it does get easier. You might struggle at the beginning, but once you can pull one case study together, it's much easier to be able to do that in the future. You just need to know what you're asking so that you can get it all down. The big thing, budgets. They want to know what you spent your money on. As with the monitoring form, go back to your original budget and look at what you said you would spend that money on. Have you spent it all? Have you spent it differently? Were some costs different to what you actually thought? Don't panic. They understand that some things, especially at the moment, cost more than you anticipated. But gather the evidence, write it down, and compare how you spent your money to how you were originally intended to do so. If there's anything significantly different, I would hope that you had let the Community Foundation know beforehand, rather than when the monitoring form drops in. You know, they are there, they are lovely people, they are at the end of an email that you can ask for help. So if you think that something's going slightly awry, drop them a line when that's happening rather than after the event. Being open and transparent leads them to believe that you're trustworthy. It makes them think that you're a good bet for funding in the future. And the more that they can think that, the more beneficial it is for your group, really. We're coming to the end now. What I would say is, please make sure that you have sufficient time to complete the form properly with good quality information in all of the sections, rather than considering it a tiresome burden that you have to do so you can get the next bid in or the next lot of money. I think perhaps the HCF staff are very skilled at realising when things have been done in a hurry or somebody's really taken some time. So they use your feedback to monitor the success and the outcomes of the programme. Like I said, that they then share on rather. So every monitoring report is reviewed. And if they feel that your project's particularly successful, for example, they might then think of you if additional funding streams come from another funder or something like that. Community Foundation has access to an awful lot of funders, and it could be that they think, oh yeah, that's particularly good, that's worked particularly well for that cohort. I'll suggest that they apply for this funding stream. They will ask, and we're still jumping, they will ask for clarification if there's information lacking. You know, as I said, they will look at every single response. They'll ask questions, and the easier you can make it for them, the happier that they will be in the long run. And I think that is the end. And if I stop sharing, it means I should get the gallery up. And has anybody got any questions? Other than John, I think everybody's cameras are off. So it's just John and I in this. So it's a bit of a whistle stop tour through, and actually I did it quicker today than I did it last night, but it took me longer. But has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? Is anybody out there? No. So
Obviously covered everything, Jackie.
yeah, whistle stop tour. I hadn't got a clock with me. I was thinking, oh my goodness, I've spent too long, but actually in reality I was quicker than I thought. John, have you got any questions, seeing as you're the one with the camera on?
You know what, that was very comprehensive, Jackie, and it's lovely to see everybody again these days, you know, after the last 2 years.
We're all still here. So,
I know, but it was lovely to actually see your face and listen to her voice, and yeah, thanks. Just really appreciate that. I mean, yeah, it's, you know, we've got good experience, but you know, we always learn something new, whatever happens, all the time. You know, that's the secret of life, I think, being open to new ideas and ways of working, and you know, how to develop the monitoring, evaluating. That was really comprehensive. So no, thank you, and thanks, Nikki, and the team there as well. Everybody putting it together.
So I just think you need to make sure that it's simple and proportionate. They're not looking for long monitoring, difficult questionnaires and things like that. There are simple ways of doing it throughout, and communication's the key, really. There are all workers sort of delivering these activities. Get them to ask the questions, but also at the end of the day, get them to write it down. You know, if they've had a really nice chat with a particular child, get them to write it down, and that could be expanded into a case study. This is not something that you have to be paying staff at the end of the session to do. These are simple things that you can do through just talking and sitting and chatting with the young people, that actually we should be doing anyhow to check that they're feeling safe and happy throughout the day. So well, if there is nothing else to add, you can leave, I'm guessing. So what we'll do is, I've got the slides and I will send them to Louise and Nikki, and they'll send them out. And I think if the session recording goes well, that will also be available. Perhaps you could slow me down and have me in slow-mo if you've got a particular point, because I was so quick.